Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the joint meeting of Assembly Ways and Means and Senate Finance to order. If the staff could please call the roll.
Senator Brooks,
Here.
Senator Canizaro, Senator Dennis, Senator Dondero Loop, Senator Goycochea, Senator Hammond, Senator Kiekefer, Senator Ratty, Senator Severs Gansert, Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Here.
Assemblyman Frierson, Assemblywoman Gorlow, Assemblyman Hafen, Assemblywoman Howdigi, Assemblyman Levitt, Assemblywoman Miller, Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno, Assemblywoman Peters, Assemblyman Roberts, Assemblywoman Titus, Assemblywoman Tolles, Assemblyman Watts, Chair Carlton.
And I am here. Welcome, everyone. Friday morning. And I believe this weekend, this is actually going to be a real Friday. So it might be one of your last ones, so enjoy it. So with that, we have a couple of budgets to close this morning. I believe the first one we have to deal with this morning is the Governor's Office, high-level nuclear waste. Good morning. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members. My name is Julie Waller with Fiscal Analysis Division, and today I'll walk you through the closing of the Governor's Office of High-Level Nuclear Waste, as well as 14 budgets for the Attorney General's Office. The first budget is found on page 3 of your packet. It's Budget 1005. The Agency for Nuclear Projects, also known as the Office of High-Level Nuclear Waste, was formally established by the 1985 legislature and statute. Funding for the agency consists of general fund appropriation, an annual grant from the Western Governors Association, and an annual transfer of highway fund appropriation from the Nevada Department of Transportation to support activities related to the transportation of low-level and mixed nuclear waste. There are no major closing issues. The committee will recall during the budget hearing, the agency provided an update on the Yucca Mountain licensing activities. Under other closing items, there is one other closing item for replacement equipment. Other closing item number 2 just indicates that in the governor's recommended budget, general fund appropriations of $437,639 in each year of the 21-23 biennium are recommended in the base budget for state-funded contracts to support ongoing services for outside counsel to assist with the Yucca Mountain litigation and for representation of the state before the U.S. Regulatory Commission. For comparison, the 2019 legislature approved general fund appropriations of $507,784 for this purpose in each year of the 2019-21 biennium. During the budget hearing, the agency testified the amount of funding recommended in the executive budget was adequate to address the needs of the agency's efforts regarding Yucca Mountain. However, additional resources may be needed if the Yucca Mountain licensing proceedings were to be restarted. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items be approved as recommended by the governor, with authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you very much, Ms. Waller. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing none, Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we close other items as recommended by the governor with technical adjustments as necessary.
A motion from Senator Brooks.
Second.
Second from Ms. Monroe Moreno. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, passes unanimously of the members present. And staff, if you would please note Senator Hammond is now present. Thank you very much. Moving on. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Julie Waller again for the record. On page 5 of your packet, we have the Attorney General's Administrative Budget Account, Budget 1030. And this budget is primarily funded through assessments paid by agencies and boards and commissions that receive legal services from the Office of the Attorney General. And this assessment is known as the Office of Attorney General Cost Allocation Plan. Budget receives transfers from the Department of Transportation, the Cannabis Compliance Board, and as well as some general fund and other miscellaneous revenues. There is one major closing issue in this budget, and this was the governor's recommendation to fund the reclassification of an administrative services officer position. As the committee will recall, the 2019 legislature approved the elimination of a budget analyst position and associated costs, resulting in general fund savings of $110,070 in fiscal year 2020 and $110,408 in fiscal year 2021. In conjunction with this position elimination, the legislature approved the reclassification of an ASO 2 position to an ASO 3 position in anticipation of this position assuming the additional responsibilities and duties of the former budget analyst position. Although this reclassification was formally approved by the 2019 legislature due to the circumstances surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting economic impact, the reclassification was not implemented during this current biennium as a cost-saving measure. As such, the governor recommends Attorney General cost allocation assessments of $10,484 in fiscal year 22 and $11,130 in fiscal year 23 to fund the reclassification. During the February 12th budget hearing, the agency testified that as a result of this decision to delay the legislatively approved reclassification this biennium, the chief financial officer has assumed the majority of duties of the eliminated budget analyst position. The agency further testified that the chief financial officer, who oversees 5 functional units, is currently unable to perform all of the required duties for these units. However, once the duties of the eliminated budget analyst 3 position are transferred to the newly reclassified ASO 3 position, the chief financial officer would be able to resume performing all the duties necessary to provide oversight to the 5 functional units. Do the money committees wish to recommend Attorney General cost allocation assessments of $10,484 in fiscal year 22 and $11,130 in fiscal year 2023 to fund the reclassification of an Administrative Services Officer 2 position to an Administrative Services Officer 3 position?
And it would be the chair's intent to go ahead and go over other closing items also, Ms. Waller, and then take one motion on both. So please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Under other closing items, there are 5 other closing items with a technical adjustment to the Attorney General's salary as other closing item number 6. In the other closing items 1 through 5, fiscal staff has no issues with these items. And again, other closing item number 6, with the cost of living adjustment approved by the 2019 legislature, the elected officials that begin their term in January of 2023 are entitled to this 3% cost of living adjustment that was approved for 2020. Therefore, the technical adjustment would be needed to increase the salary of the Attorney General for the period of January 2023 through June 30, 2023, funded by general fund appropriations totaling $2,656 in fiscal year 2023. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 5 be approved as recommended by the governor, and approval of other closing item 6 to account for the cost of living adjustment to the Attorney General's salary. Fiscal staff would also request authority to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you very much, Ms. Waller. Questions from the committee on either the major closing item or other closing items as presented by staff? Not seeing any questions. Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we make the Attorney General cost allocation as indicated by staff, and we close the other items 1 through 5 and 6 as indicated by staff with technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you. I have a motion from Senator Brooks.
I'll second the motion.
Second from Ms. Monroe Moreno. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, passes unanimously of the members present. Moving on to the next budget, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is the Attorney General's Workers' Compensation Fraud Budget, Budget 1033. And this budget has two fraud units, the first being the Workers' Compensation Fraud Unit. This unit is responsible for the investigation and prosecution of fraud committed by employees, employers, or medical providers against insurance companies or self-insured employers for workers' compensation. This unit is funded through a transfer from the Workers' Compensation and Safety Fund administered by the Division of Industrial Relations. The Insurance Fraud Unit investigates and prosecutes insurance fraud cases and has the additional responsibility of prosecuting individuals who make or assist someone else in making material misrepresentations on applications for insurance or filing false claims for benefits. The Insurance Fraud Unit is funded through a transfer of insurer assessments collected by the Insurance Division of the Department of Business and Industry. The revenue collected from civil penalty recoveries for the Workers' Compensation Fraud Unit and the Insurance Fraud Unit also are included in this budget and are used to support the investigation activities of the fraud units. There is one major closing issue. This was 7 new full-time positions. The governor recommends reserve reductions totaling $657,053 in fiscal year 2022 and $825,151 in fiscal year 2023 to support the personnel and operating costs of 7 new positions to address increased caseloads of insurance fraud. The agency indicates statutory changes resulting from the passage of Senate Bill 86, which was approved during the 2019 session, and an increase in the volume and complexity of insurance complaints necessitate additional staffing to manage this caseload. The 7 new positions would be 2 legal secretary positions, which would provide administrative support for the 3 new criminal investigators and 2 new senior deputy attorney general positions included in this decision unit. The addition of 3 criminal investigator positions is also recommended. These investigators would conduct criminal investigations for prosecution of criminals who commit fraud related to insurance. And the remaining 2 positions are 2 unclassified senior deputy attorney positions, which would review legal parameters to establish case designation and determine those to be presented for criminal prosecution. During the budget hearing on February 12th, the agency was asked by the Money Committee to discuss the current backlog of cases referred to the Insurance Fraud Unit. The agency testified there are currently just over 400 open cases in various stages of prosecution. Additional testimony provided by the agency noted insurance companies are required to report any suspected fraud to the Office of the Attorney General pursuant to NRS 686A.285. The agency further clarified that there is no current backlog in the Workers' Compensation Fraud Unit, as there are more investigators and compliance officers in this unit compared to the Insurance Fraud Unit. In follow-up communication, the agency notes the Insurance Fraud Unit receives approximately 120 referrals each month, of which only 2% result in prosecution. The agency advises if the 7 recommended new positions are approved, the agency anticipates its prosecution rate would increase to 3 to 4% of total referrals. The agency further indicates that although the addition of 3 investigators and 2 prosecutors would not eliminate the backlog of cases, it would allow the agency to begin working on more of the cases that are currently awaiting assignment and would enable the agency to address prosecution-worthy cases sooner. And it should also be noted that NRS 171.8085, the statute of limitations for insurance fraud, is within 3 years after commission of the offense. Given the existing backlog, the Money Committee's questioned whether 1 or more positions should have an accelerated start date of July 1, 2021. In response, the agency testified that it would be in full support of an accelerated start date for the recommended new positions. In follow-up, the agency indicates that the positions are interdependent, so the agency would prefer all positions start as soon as possible. Fiscal staff would note that the total additional cost of accelerating the recommended start date of these 7 positions from October 1 to July 1st would be $191,915. In regard to the estimated time frame for training, the agency notes the insurance fraud cases require a specific set of knowledge and details of investigation, and as such, the agency estimates that at least 3 months of training may be needed before investigators would be ready to assist in preparing cases, unless they have prior existence in insurance fraud. In addition, there may be other basic requirements for the investigator position, such as medical evaluations or post-training, if the certification is not already held by potential candidates. Do the money committees wish to approve 7 new full-time positions and associated operating costs for the insurance fraud unit funded by reserve reductions totaling $657,053 in fiscal year 2022 and $825,151 in fiscal year 2023 to address backlogs and caseload increases of insurance fraud? And if so, do the money committees wish to approve accelerating the start date of the 7 new positions from October 1 to July 1, resulting in an additional cost of $191,915 in fiscal year 2022, funded by reserve reductions? Moving on to page 13, under other closing items, there are 2 other closing items. The first is registration fees for staff to attend various conferences. Other closing item number 2, the governor recommends a replacement of computer equipment. However, as reflected on the first page of the closing document, fiscal staff recommends a technical adjustment to revise and align the funding sources for expenditures in fiscal year 2023, resulting in the elimination of the transfers from industrial relations of $21,030 and a net reserve reduction of $7,010 in fiscal year 2023 to fund the equipment replacement. Fiscal staff recommends approval of other closing item 1 as recommended by the governor, another closing item 2 with a noted technical adjustment, and requests authority to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you very much, Ms. Waller. Before I go to questions, I'd like staff to note that Senator Canizero is present via Zoom. Okay, thank you. With that, Senator Ratty had a question.
Thank you. And I apologize for not getting into this in the hearing, but I just want to make sure they understand. So Senate Bill 86 from the last session was a conversation about recognizing that there was a backlog, which raised a fee, and now that fee is going into a fund, and now there's been enough accumulated for you to be able to hire staff. Is that where we are?
That was an excellent encapsulation.
Yes, Madam Chair, through you to Senator Ratty, that is correct, that Senate Bill 86 increased the assessments, was brought forward by the industry to address the backlog so that the AG's insurance fraud unit could add additional staff to address the backlog of cases. And there is sufficient funding in the reserve at this time to support these new 7 positions.
And then that would be my follow-up question. So we got enough money over a year to build up the reserve. Is it sustainable for the long term? So we're because using the term reserve, we're drawing down a reserve, but will there be enough income generated from this doubling of the assessment going forward to maintain these positions?
Julie Waller, for the record, yes, that is correct. The assessment is ongoing, and so the assessment is collected by the Division of Insurance, who is able to retain a percentage and then transfers the remaining assessments over to the Attorney General's office. So this assessment, the increase in the assessment is ongoing and would be able to sustain the positions for the future.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions at this time? The one noted difference between the previous conversation and today's conversation would be the proposal to bump up the filling of these positions from October 1, which is the default date, to July the 1st, so that folks can get up and get going. It's my understanding that there are statute of limitations on a number of these cases, and we want to make sure that the resources and personnel are there, and a couple of these positions are post positions, and we know how difficult it is to hire for those and then get them trained and get them on the ground quickly. So by changing the date, we give them the opportunity to start working as we move forward. Any other questions or comments on that? Senator Severs-Ganser.
Thank you, Chair Carlton. My expectation would be if they weren't able to hire people by July 1, whatever money is left over, if we approve the $191,000, would end up reverting to the special account at the end of the year anyway. So, because it may be difficult to hire all 7 by July 1, but if we appropriate the money and it's not used, it still gets reverted to their fund, so I think that works.
That would be my understanding, because this is their special fund. This is not general fund. It would not come back to us. So they would draw down the money as they would need it. This is the allocation for the biennium for this amount, and then money will be accrued again, and it'll just keep generating and going forward. Any other questions or comments from any members at this time? Not seeing any. Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we approve the 7 new full-time positions and associated operating costs for the insurance fraud unit funded by reserve reductions totaling $657,053 in FY 2022, $825,151 in FY 2023 to address backlogs and caseload increase of insurance fraud, and we approve, move it to July 1st, resulting in an additional $191,915 in FY 2022.
Funded through the reserve reductions. I have a motion by Senator Brooks. Second?
I'll second the motion.
A second from Ms. Monroe Moreno. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Senator Canizero?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion passes unanimously of all the members present. We can move on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Julie Waller, again, Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. On page 15 of your packet, the next budget is the Consumer Advocate budget, Budget 1038. The Bureau of Consumer Protection provides professional representation, education, and advocates for consumers
I'm
who
sorry, Ms.
utilize
Waller.
regulated.
I'm sorry, Ms. Waller. I don't believe we did the other closing items. I apologize. I think I got a step ahead of you. Sorry about that. I believe it's already been discussed. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, did you want me to walk through the other closing items again, or did you want to just take a motion?
We're just going to take the motion. So Senator Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we close other closing items 1 as recommended by the governor and other closing item 2 with the noted technical adjustment with fiscal staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Motion from Senator Brooks, second
I will second the motion.
from Ms. Monroe Moreno. Any questions or comments on that motion? Not hearing any. That's my fluff for the Friday. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Senator Canizero?
Aye.
Thank you. Passes unanimously of the members present. Now, Ms. Waller, thank you very much. I apologize.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Chair. Budget 1038, again, is the AG's Consumer Advocate budget. And the Bureau of Consumer Protection provides representation, education, and advocates for consumers who utilize utilities, regulated utilities. The Bureau of Consumer Protection also serves to protect Nevada consumers from unfair and deceptive trade practices, telemarketing fraud, securities fraud, through both civil and criminal enforcement. In addition, the Consumer Advocate provides victim assistance, consumer education, and public outreach. This budget is funded through utility mill assessment for the activities of the related to utilities, while the telemarketing, consumer fraud, deceptive trade, and securities fraud functions of the Bureau are funded through general fund appropriations. There is one major closing issue in this budget. That's a funding source change for 3 positions. The Morgan Stanley settlement funds, which currently fund personnel and associated costs of 1 legal secretary position and 2 senior deputy attorney general positions, are projected to be fully expended by the end of fiscal year 2021. To continue support for these positions, the governor recommends replacing the expired Morgan Stanley settlement funds with other settlement funds totaling $412,265 fiscal year 2022 and $415,154 in fiscal year 2023. During the budget hearing on February 12th, the agency testified the work of the two senior deputy attorney general and legal secretary positions are primarily focused on mortgage and other financial fraud and consumer protection issues. In addition, these positions are involved with multi-state investigations related to consumer protection and securing settlements that often result in restitution and additional protective actions for Nevada citizens who have been defrauded. Given the recommended settlement funds to replace the expiring Morgan Stanley settlement funds are only sufficient to support the cost of these three positions through the end of the 21-23 biennium, the agency testified it recognizes the current budget practice to fund ongoing position costs with one-time settlement funds is problematic, and as a result, the agency is engaging in discussions with a variety of stakeholders to develop and recommend a more sustainable funding plan for the positions in future biennia. Do the money committees wish to continue funding one legal secretary and two senior deputy attorney general positions and associated costs by replacing expired Morgan Stanley settlement funds with other settlement funds totaling $412,265 in fiscal year 2022 and $415,154 in fiscal year 2023. Under other closing items, there are 4 other closing items. Fiscal staff believes these appear reasonable. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 and 2 be approved as recommended by the governor, and other closing items 3 and 4 be closed consistent with the money committee's decision regarding the companion decision units in the National Settlement Administration budget, with authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
So with that, committee members, any questions? We do realize that there is an issue with using settlement dollars to fund staff because eventually they do end. And typically those positions would go away, but if there's still a workload to be done, looks like the conversation is about future funding plans on how to move forward with these particular positions. Not seeing any questions from anyone, I'll go to Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we continue funding one legal secretary and two senior deputy attorney general positions and associated costs by replacing expired Morgan Stanley settlement funds with other settlement funds totaling $412,265,000 in FY22 and $415,154,000 in FY 2023.
And if the committee's comfortable, we're going to go ahead and do other closing items, also all in the same motion.
And in addition, I move that we close items 1 and 2 as approved as recommended by the governor, and item 3 and 4 be closed consistent with Money Committee's decision regarding the companion decision units in the National Settlements Administration budget with technical adjustments as necessary.
Motion from Senator Brooks,
I will second the motion.
second from Ms. Monroe Moreno. Questions or comments on the motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Senator Canizaro?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously of the members present. Thank you very much. Moving on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 19 of your packet, the next budget is the Attorney General's forfeiture budget, Budget 1043. The forfeiture budget was established during the 2015-17 biennium to receive funds from the United States Department of Treasury Equitable Sharing Program. The Equitable Sharing Program allows any federal, state, or local law enforcement agency that participates in an investigation or prosecution resulting in federal forfeitures to request an equitable share of the forfeiture net proceeds. Guidelines for the program indicate they must be used to supplement resources and shall not be used to replace appropriated resources. And at the top of the page 20, there are specific outline uses of these forfeiture funds. There's one major closing issue in this budget, that is additional expenditure reductions required to balance the budget. The executive budget recommends reductions for out-of-state per diem and registration fees, which would generate cost savings of $1,193 in fiscal year 2022 and $1,204 in fiscal year 2023, and with a corresponding increase to reserves. This action is recommended to align expenditures with available funding to ensure a balanced budget for the 21-23 biennium. The governor's budget does not anticipate receipt of additional forfeiture funds projected for the 21-23 biennium. However, should the agency receive any additional forfeiture funds, they would basically bring those funds into the budget through a work program. Fiscal staff would note that since the budget hearing on February 12th, the agency has expended additional $2,121 in fiscal year 21, which further reduces the projected FY21 balance forward amount from $18,929 to $12,360 in fiscal year 2022. To align the recommended expenditures with the projected available funding, fiscal staff recommends a technical adjustment to increase the expenditure reductions recommended in Decision Unit E225 from $1,193 to $2,328 in fiscal year 2022, and from $1,204 to $6,638 in fiscal year 2023, as shown on the first page of this closing document. The agency and the Governor's Finance Office concur with this technical adjustment. Do the money committees wish to approve expenditure reductions of $2,328 in fiscal year 2022 and $6,638 in fiscal year 2023, as revised by the noted technical adjustment, to align expenditures with projected available funding in fiscal year 2023? There are no other closing items, and fiscal staff would request authority to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. I think my message would be, please don't spend any more money before May the 31st so we don't have to do this again. Thank you very much. With that, Senator Brooks. Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any questions? I didn't see anyone raise their hand, but I'm double checking. Not seeing any. Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve expenditure reductions of $2,328 in FY 2022 and $6,638 in FY 2023, as revised by the noted technical adjustment to align expenditures in projected available funding in 2023.
And other closing items.
Oh, and and to be able to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you, Senator Brooks.
I'll second the motion.
I have a second from Ms. Monroe Moreno. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Senator Canizaro?
Aye.
Thank you. Passes unanimously of the members present. Moving on, Ms. Waller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Julie Waller again for the record. The next budget for your consideration is the National Settlement Administration Budget, Budget 1045. The National Settlement Administration Budget was established during the 2011-12 interim and provides the Attorney General a mechanism to provide for the general administration of the $87.7 million national mortgage settlement funds received by the state. There are two major closing issues. The first major closing issue is the governor's recommendation to transfer one legal researcher position and one chief deputy attorney general position and associated costs, totaling $278,464 in fiscal year 2022 and $280,013 in fiscal year 2023 from this budget to the Consumer Advocate budget, Budget 1038. The agency indicates the primary purpose of this recommendation is to transfer the legal researcher and chief deputy attorney general positions to a budget whose statutory responsibility is more closely aligned to the duties performed by the positions, which is the Consumer Advocate budget. During the budget hearing, the Money Committees acknowledged the agency had identified other settlement funds to support the legal researcher and chief deputy attorney general positions in the Consumer Advocate budget for the next 2 years. However, the committee questioned how the agency planned to fund these positions after the 21-23 biennium. In follow-up, the agency confirms the intent is to continue funding these positions with available settlement funds for the foreseeable future. Furthermore, the agency indicated that if approved, the transfer of the legal researcher and chief deputy attorney general positions from this budget to the consumer advocate budget, budget 1038, would save national mortgage settlement funds of $278,464 in fiscal year 2022 and $280,013 in fiscal year 2023, which the agency testified would be utilized to partially restore reductions to subgrants for partner organizations in the 21-23 biennium, which will be discussed in the major closing item number 2 below. Do the money committees wish to approve the transfer of 2 positions and associated costs of $278,464 in fiscal year 2022 and $280,013 in fiscal year 2023 from this budget to the consumer advocate budget to be funded with other settlement funds in the consumer advocate budget? Moving on to major closing item number 2. The sustainability position and programs funded by the National Mortgage Settlement Funds. The governor recommends total expenditures of $3.7 million in fiscal year 2022 and $2.8 million in fiscal year 2023 for the National Settlement Administration budget in order to support the existing 21 positions and associated costs and contractual expenditures to various nonprofit entities for program support. The executive budget includes reserve funds totaling $3.4 million at the end of fiscal year 2022 and $805,736 at the end of fiscal year 2023. The governor's budget projects the reserve balance of the one-time National Mortgage Settlement Funds to decline to $805,736 by the end of fiscal year 2023. At the current level of expenditures and reserves recommended in the executive budget for the 21-23 biennium, National Mortgage Settlement Funds would no longer be sufficient to fund all 21 positions and associated costs beginning in FY 2024. The table on page 26 compares the National Mortgage Settlement Funds that were approved by the 2019 legislature for the 2019-21 biennium as compared to what is in the governor's recommended budget for the 21-23 biennium. And as you can see, the funding is dwindling down to the projected level of $805,736 by the end of fiscal year 2023. During the budget hearing, the agency explained that due to the diminishing National Mortgage Settlement Funds available to support the budget, the amount of funding subgrantees would receive from the Office of the Attorney General to work on consumer protection issues would be reduced for the upcoming biennium. And this was done in order to maintain sufficient funding for the remaining 21 positions and operating costs in the budget. The agency indicated it reduced funding to subgrantees proportionally so as not to cut one specific organization, and that the agency had been in discussion with partner organizations for over a year in anticipation of the reduced funding available for subgrants in the upcoming biennium. In response to a request by the money committees to identify the funding reductions for subgrants to partner organizations, fiscal staff has prepared the table in the middle of page 27 to summarize the funding reductions that were applied to the base budget for the 21-23 biennium in order for the agency to produce a balanced budget to the governor. As illustrated in the table, the agency reduced its base budget funding for subgrants to partner organizations by a total of $1.2 million in fiscal year 2022 and $2.2 million in fiscal year 2023 in order to maintain sufficient funding and a balanced budget. As noted earlier, the governor's recommended budget includes a reserve balance of $805,736 in fiscal year 2023. This would be inclusive of the savings that would be generated if the position transfer in Major Issue 1 is approved. In follow-up communication with fiscal staff, the agency indicated it intends to redistribute the reserve balance in the legislatively approved budget back to partner organizations to partially offset funding reductions which were required to balance the base budget. When learning of these funding reductions to partner organizations, the money committees did express concern, particularly in the reductions to the legal aid entities. In response to these concerns, the agency testified it had initially requested general fund or other settlement funds to be transferred to this budget to offset the loss of national mortgage settlement funds and the pending reductions of funding to partner organizations. However, based on concerns from staff at the Controller's Office, the Governor's Finance Office, and the Legislative Council Bureau's Fiscal Analysis Division, which noted the restricted nature of this budget as a special revenue fund created for a specific purpose, the agency proceeded to proportionally reduce funding to subgrants to partner organizations to balance the budget. In follow-up communications after the budget hearing with the Governor's Finance Office, the Controller's Office reiterated that this special revenue fund was established for the express purpose of receiving the proceeds of the consent judgment order related to the national mortgage settlement. And as such, the Controller's Office did not believe it would be appropriate to transfer other settlement funds into this fund unless the settlements are for this express same purpose. As noted previously, the agency did have to reduce $1.2 million from the base budget in fiscal year 2022 and $2.2 million in fiscal year 2023 to balance the budget. And while the agency intends to use the remaining reserve balance to offset these reduced funding levels to partner organizations, the balance in the reserve is only sufficient to partially restore the reductions in fiscal year 2022. As recommended in the governor's budget, funding for subgrants to partner organizations would be completely eliminated in fiscal year 2023. Therefore, given the guidelines from the Controller's Office with respect to the restricted nature of this budget, the money committees could consider transferring these subgrant programs from this budget to the state settlements budget in fiscal year 2023 in order to utilize unobligated settlement funds of up to approximately $1.8 million in that budget to provide subgrants, to continue providing subgrants to partner organizations in fiscal year 2023. The unobligated settlement funds in the state settlements budget are from the Volkswagen settlement, which are eligible for use for consumer protections and deceptive trade practices. While this option would be a one-time solution until such time as alternative funding sources could be identified by the agency, it would allow the agency to continue its consumer protection efforts in fiscal year 2023 through its subgrant program to partner organizations. Lastly, the money committees asked the agency to discuss any alternative funding sources apart from general fund that have been explored to continue supporting these consumer protection efforts. And the agency indicated it had formulated some ideas to ensure that this budget would be sustainably funded in the future, and that it has been in conversations with partner organizations, stakeholders, the Governor's Finance Office, the Money Committee members, and the Legislative Council Bureau to find a funding solution to the situation, and looks forward to working with the Money Committees to develop a sustainable funding solution. The options presented for consideration are to A, approve the base budget funding reductions to the subgrant program for partner organizations, totaling $1.2 million in fiscal year 2022 and $2.2 million in fiscal year 2023, as recommended by the governor, in order to maintain sufficient funding to support the remaining positions and associated operating costs through the end of the 21-23 biennium. Or option B, approve the base budget funding reductions for the subgrant program for partner organizations totaling $1.2 million in fiscal year 2022 and transfer the call center, financial guidance assistant, guardianship program, and legal services categories to the state settlement budget in fiscal year 2023 in order to continue funding these services with unobligated Volkswagen settlement funds. There are no other closing items in this budget. And I'd be happy to take any questions, Madam Chair.
And thank you very much, Ms. Waller, for walking us through that whole continuum of how these two decisions are tied together. And that's why we kind of went by that first motion and went into the second, so that we could have a comprehensive conversation about how these positions will move and how the funding, how the proposal to build a bridge for this funding moving forward so that there are other options in dealing with it. So I want to open it up to questions from committee members. Ms. Bedinas Thompson.
Thank you so much. So just making sure that we're keeping with good precedent, I think I see here and I hear staff saying that the unobligated dollars from the Volkswagen settlement are intended for consumer protection and deceptive trade practices. So we've looked at the programs that we're gonna, in 2023, move these dollars over, and they all fit that definition. I see that they kind of do, like, as just looking at them with the guardianship programs, and when those go bad, that definitely seems to be, deceptive trade practices that we're trying to fight there. But that's the definition and that we're working with, and that's the nexus we're establishing, right?
Yes, Madam Chair, through you to Assemblyman Benitez Thompson. That is correct, that these, each of these categories do relate to the consumer protection and deceptive trade practices, so they would be eligible for funding from the Volkswagen settlement funds.
Other questions from other committee members at this time? And I'd like to thank the folks who worked very hard to figure this out. The committee, when we had this first discussion, did have concerns about the possibility of the loss of these resources for our constituents who might need them over the next 2 years. But we also realize the financial hurdles that we have to get over in the next 18 months. So I'd like to thank those who worked very hard to try to figure out, after the Attorney General's office struck out with the comptroller, struck out with GFO, then struck out with LCB. Everybody wanted to fix it but couldn't figure out how. So I want to thank those folks who put their heads together to figure out how we could keep this bridge built moving forward and then have future conversations about these services. Any other questions or comments on these two? I don't believe I see any. So with that, I would go to Senator Brooks, and we do have two separate motions. So we'll do the first motion on the position changes, and then we'll go to the second motion on the choices of A or B. So with that, Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we approve the transfer of two positions and associated costs of $278,464 in FY 2022 and $280,013 in FY 2023 from this budget to the Consumer Advocate budget to be funded with other settlement funds in the Consumer Advocate budget.
Motion from Chair Brooks,
I'll second the motion.
second from Ms. Monroe Moreno. Any questions or comments on this motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Senator Canizero?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously of the members present. Senator Brooks, the second motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to make a motion to approve, this would be option B.
She needs to stay.
Just one second. I would move that we approve option B, which is approve the base budget funding reductions for the subgrant program for partner organizations totaling $1.2 million in FY 2022 and transfer the call center, financial guidance assistance, guardianship program, and legal services categories to the state settlements budget, budget account 1045, in FY 2023 in order to continue funding these services with unobligated Volkswagen settlement funds.
I have a motion from Chair Brooks.
I'll second the motion.
From Vice Chair Monroe Moreno. Questions, comments on the motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those in opposition? Senator Canizero.
Aye.
Thank you. Passes unanimously of the members present. Moving on to the next item, Ms. Waller. And thank you again for all your hard work on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 29, the next budget is State Settlements, Budget 1047. This budget was approved by the 2017 legislature to be used by the Office of the Attorney General when settlements are awarded to the state and allocated to the Office of the Attorney General. There is one major closing issue, and that is the continued funding for one criminal investigator position. The executive budget recommends the continued support of one criminal investigator position funded with settlement funds totaling $117,280 in fiscal year 2022 and $117,986 in fiscal year 2023. In approving this position, the Interim Finance Committee directed the agency to request the position as an enhancement in its 2019-21 biennial budget request. However, it appears there was an oversight and the position was not requested as an enhancement, but rather continued in the agency's base budget. The Office of the Attorney General seeks to comply with the IFC directive by
Waller?
requesting the continuation.
Ms. Waller, if I could ask you to pause
Yes.
for a moment, please. I need a 1-minute recess.
Yes,
Ms. Kaufman?
of course.
Ms. Waller, we're going to ask you to pause for just a moment. The committee needs a technical adjustment because in reading the motion, Senator Brooks, we had a change in the sheets and the number that he read was incorrect when it comes to the budget account. 1047 is what was supposed to be noted, and he had noted 1045. So the chair would accept a motion to rescind our previous action. I have a motion from Ms. Medinas-Thompson, a second from Senator Dennis. Questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those in opposition? Senator Canizero?
Aye.
Thank you. Passes unanimously. So with that, that motion is rescinded. Senator Brooks, for the second time around the block. Here we go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we approve the base budget funding reductions for the subgrant program for partner organizations totaling $1.2 million in FY 2022 and transfer the call center, financial guidance assistance, guardianship program, and legal services categories to the state settlement budget account 1047 in FY 2023 in order to continue funding these services with unobligated Volkswagen settlement funds.
Motion from Chair Brooks, a second.
I'll second the motion.
Second from Vice Chair Monroe Moreno. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Senator Canizero.
Yeah, aye.
Thank you, Senator. Passes unanimously of the members present. Thank you very much, Ms. Waller. Sorry to interrupt you. We can now proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, continuing on page 29 with the state settlements budget, Budget 1047. Again, there is one major closing issue, and this is the continued funding for one criminal investigator position. And the purpose for this recommendation is for the agency to comply with the IFC directive that this position be requested as an enhancement. This was not done in the 2019-21 biennial budget, and therefore the Office of the Attorney General seeks to comply with this directive by requesting the continuation of this funding position as an enhancement in the 21-23 biennial budget. During the budget hearing on February 12th, the Money Committees inquired whether the agency intends to continue the criminal investigator position permanently once the settlement funds supporting the position are no longer available, and if so, how the position would be funded. In response, the agency testified that this position is critical in the fight against the opioid epidemic and in addressing the rising rate of opioid deaths in the state. As such, the agency does not intend to eliminate this position at the end of the initial 5-year period, which would be FY 2023. The agency further testified it is working to develop a more sustainable funding plan for this and other positions supported by settlement funds. As previously indicated, the governor recommends settlement funds to support the criminal investigator position and associated costs for the upcoming biennium. Fiscal staff recommends a technical adjustment to revise the funding source from settlement income to reserve reductions, as shown on the first page of the closing document. The agency and the governor's finance office concur with this technical adjustment. As noted, after funding the cost of this criminal investigator position with reserve reductions and the technical adjustment noted above, the budget is projected to have an ending fund balance of $1.8 million in fiscal year 2023, which consists of the remaining Volkswagen settlement funds. Fiscal staff inquired of the agency whether these funds were obligated for any specific purpose, and they indicated that it would fund the position associated costs with the balance of funding available to carry forward to subsequent years, in which the money committees have now since approved the transfer of those categories from budget 1045 into this budget to utilize the Volkswagen settlement funds in reserve to continue funding those programs in fiscal year 2023. Do the money committees wish to approve the continuation of one criminal investigator position and associated costs totaling $117,280 in fiscal year 2022 and $117,986 in fiscal year 2023, with a noted technical adjustment to fund these costs through reserve reductions? Madam Chair, there are no other closing items, and fiscal staff would request authority to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Okay, so with that, committee members, any questions? Not seeing any questions from anyone? Chair Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we approve the continuation of one criminal investigator position and associated costs totaling $117,280,000 in FY 2022 and $117,986,000 in $117,986, in FY 2023, with the noted technical adjustments to fund these costs through reserve reductions and other technical adjustments as necessary.
A motion from Chair Brooks,
I second the motion.
a second from Vice Chair Monroe Moreno. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Senator Canizero? I believe we just lost Senator Canizero, so not a problem there. Motion passes unanimously of the members present. So with that, moving on to the next budget, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Julie Waller again for the record. And Madam Chair, I will now present the budgets for which the committees have not previously reviewed for the Office of the Attorney General, and for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing the closing recommendations. I will pause following my presentation for each budget to allow for questions. And when I presented the last budget in this group and questions have been addressed, the chair may wish to ask for a single motion for closing consideration on all of the budgets for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing recommendations. The first budget is the Budget 1002, the extradition coordinator, that can be found on page 33 of your packet. Fiscal staff is responsible for developing the closing recommendations for this budget. The budget is funded through a combination of general fund appropriations and recovery payments made by fugitives who have been returned to Nevada. There are no major closing issues, and there is one other closing item for replacement equipment.
Committee members, any questions? Not seeing any. Please continue, Ms. Waller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on to Budget 1031, the Special Litigation Fund. Fiscal staff is responsible for developing the closing recommendations. This budget includes general fund appropriations which support costs of litigation and administrative proceedings related to the proposed nuclear waste repository at Yucca Mountain. There are no major closing issues and only one other closing item, again for replacement equipment. Madam Chair, if there are any questions?
Committee members, any questions? A whole 3 desktop computers. We're on a roll. Used to be paper and pencil, now it's computers. We have evolved. Not seeing any other questions or comments. Ms. Waller, please continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is the Attorney General Crime Prevention Budget, Budget 1036. The executive budget recommends general fund appropriations, as well as fees from the sale of missing or exploited children license plate and civil penalties to support this budget over the biennium. The Office of the Advocate for Missing or Exploited Children assists law enforcement in locating missing children and protecting children from exploitation. There are no major closing issues, and there are no other closing items for this budget.
Questions from any committee members? Not seeing any. Continue, Ms. Waller, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Next budget is the Medicaid fraud budget, Budget 1037. This budget houses the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit and is federally mandated program charged with the responsibility to investigate and prosecute Medicaid provider fraud, cases of patient abuse or neglect, and misappropriations of patient trust funds. The unit is funded with approximately 75% of federal funds, 25% recoveries, and a nominal general fund appropriation, which provides access to the Interim Finance Committee contingency account if needed. There are no major closing issues, and there are no other closing items.
Questions from committee members? Seeing none, please continue, Ms. Waller.
The next budget is the Attorney General Grants Unit, Budget 1040. This budget is supported primarily by federal funds, with general fund appropriations supporting the difference between salary and operating costs and the administrative caps specified in the office's grants. This budget previously was titled Violence Against Women Grants. This budget was renamed to reflect other grants awarded to the Office of the Attorney General that are not pursuant to the Violence Against Women Act. So this budget houses several federal grants. And there are no major closing issues, nor are there any other closing items recommended for this budget.
Questions? Seeing none, let's move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is the Council for Prosecuting Attorneys, Budget 1041. This budget is supported by administrative court assessments received pursuant to NRS 176.059, fees and reimbursements from training sessions, and a $100 general fund appropriation to provide access to the IFC contingency account if needed. There are no major closing issues or other closing items recommended for this budget.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Not seeing any. We can continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is Budget 1042, Victims of Domestic Violence. The Victims of Domestic Violence budget includes programs relating to domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, batterer treatment, and the Office of Ombudsman for Victims of Domestic Violence. This budget also oversees the Victim Information and Notification Everyday System, authorized pursuant to NRS 228.205. The Victim Information and Notification Everyday program provides notifications to victims regarding the custody status of offenders via a toll-free telephone number or website. There are no major closing issues, and there are no other closing items recommended for this budget.
Question, committee members? No, I think we're all good. We can move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last budget is the Attorney General Tort Claims Fund, Budget 1348. The Tort Claim Fund is an internal service fund financed through assessments on state agencies based on the number of vehicles and positions. After anticipated tort claim expenditures of $4.2 million in each year of the 21-23 biennium, which are typically based on a 3-year average, and other operating expenditures, The governor's budget recommends reserves of $3.8 million at the end of fiscal year 2022 and $3.2 million at the end of fiscal year 2023. There are no major other closing issues, and under other closing items, there is one closing item for replacement of desktop computers and a base budget technical adjustment under other closing item number 2. And this is a technical adjustment recommended by staff of $239,602 in each year of the 21-23 biennium to the base budget to align the transfer of funding between this budget and the insurance and loss prevention budget, budget 1352.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. Are there questions on this particular item? Not seeing anyone wishing to be recognized. So, Ms. Waller, your comprehensive breakdown of this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Fiscal staff recommends that the following budgets be closed as recommended by the governor with technical adjustments noted, and requests authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary. For budget 1002, the Attorney General's Extradition Coordinator, 1031, Special Litigation Fund, budget 1036, Crime Prevention, budget 1037, Medicaid Fraud, budget 1040, Grants Unit, budget 1041, Counsel for Prosecuting Attorneys, budget 1042, Victims of Domestic Violence, and budget 1348, Attorney General Tort Claims Fund, including a technical adjustment of $239,602 in each year of the 21-23 biennium to the base budget to align the transfer of funding between this budget and the insurance and loss prevention budget, budget 1352.
Not seeing any questions, and none were addressed in the individual discussions of these budgets. Chair Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we close those budgets as staff indicated.
Safe motion. Thank you very much, Senator Brooks. Do I have a second
I'll
from,
second the motion.
from Vice Chair Monroe Moreno? Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, passes unanimously of the members present. Ms. Waller, excellent job. Nice to see you, Miss Adair. You were there in case she needed to phone a friend, but that didn't have to happen today. Have a wonderful weekend. We thank you for being available in case there were questions. I believe the only item before the committee at this time would be public comment. So we will pause for just a moment and allow those who wish to make public comment to be able to call in. We have no public in the room with us yet. Hopefully that will change one day. So with that, we'll pause for just a moment. All right, committee, broadcast services, do we have anyone wishing to make public comment before our committee this morning?
Chair, this is Michael from Broadcast. The public comment line is open and working. However, we have no callers at this time.
All right. Thank you very much, Broadcast Services, for everything you do to help us be successful. So with that, committee members, have a wonderful weekend. We are adjourned. Ways and Means, folks. I will see you in our committee room on the third floor at a little bit before 10 o'clock. We'd like to start right at 10, please. So thank you all very much.
And Senate Finance, we have 10 o'clock meeting in room 1214.